Laura Schuiki? Schuiki, okay. What else? Schuiki, okay, yes, yeah, there was a Dutch pronunciation. And she, in fact, will unravel for us data mesh. I mean, over the day we have heard a lot of, I guess, definitions of data mesh, a lot of challenges that go with it. So I think it's a very nice topic to close the day with. So now the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah, so we've heard a lot about data mesh and data products today, and we also looked at this topic together with our industry partner, and we focused on challenges related to this concept and also possibilities for future research. And since we've heard a lot about data mesh today already, I will keep this very short. So normally we have domains that work with data mesh that share their data through a complicated network of nodes that makes up the data mesh. And we've already heard as well, we have 4 principles that this concept is made up of. So we have domain ownership, data as product, the SummerSOC platform, and also a federated governance. And so I want to talk about a scenario in which a data mesh brings many benefits. And this is an actual scenario that happens in real life. Namely the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which has been passed by the EU in 2022. And this obliges enterprises to share their impact or report on their impact regarding economical, social, and ecological aspects by publishing sustainability KPIs. And this is starting in 2025. Large corporations have to comply to this directive. And so let's imagine we have a company with 5 departments, and each produces data which is either stored in a platform, or maybe they have applications that produce data directly. And now we have a sustainability department that is responsible for creating this report. And now with data mesh, we can do a really cool thing, namely these departments can now share their data themselves as data products, and this is really great because they have the domain knowledge to actually know which data this sustainability department needs to create a report. And the sustainability department can then consume this data and create the report successfully. So the data mesh is a very good solution here, but there's a little problem. Namely, the original concept is very organizational and does not really include enough implementation guidelines for practitioners to actually implement a data mesh. And so what we did was look at the current state of research regarding the implementation of a data mesh. And first, we looked at work regarding the 4 principles of the data mesh concept, which most research only considers these 4 principles individually. So what was unclear then, because they don't consider the interactions between these principles. And therefore it's not clear what is missing to implement these interactions and to implement a complete data mesh. So next, we looked at publications regarding a complete implementation of such a data mesh. And what you often find is 3 kinds of papers that talk about the challenges that people face with the data mesh implementation. So there are literature reviews, there are interviews with practitioners, and then there's also one paper that combines both those aspects, but they focus on organizational challenges, which means they don't look so much at technical challenges, which are the ones that we can actually solve in computer science, right? So what we would like to have is a combination of literature and practice regarding these technical challenges. And yeah, so because these results are limited. And this is exactly what we did. So we conducted a literature review over 90 relevant publications, and we then conducted 7 interviews with industry experts from a globally operating industrial company. And from these 2 sources, we then derived 10 challenges that people face when they're implementing a data mesh. And then we went further, and from there we derived 5 research gaps, focusing on technical aspects that are meant as starting points for future research. Okay, so let's see what we found out. So all the challenges that were mentioned either in literature or in our interviews, we merged into 10 challenges that we grouped into 4 groups. And I will go through these 4 groups now. So the first group are organizational adjustments. So these are needed because the data mesh is about how a company uses their data. And as we've already heard today, this often means that we have a cultural shift, which then induces organizational challenges and changes that have to be managed. The second group are data product standards. So we've heard that data products are a central aspect of this concept, and they have been in part newly defined for the data mesh concept. And as we've heard, the industry is even unclear what a data product actually is. So there are different opinions on that. So we need standardization. The third group is governance challenges. So as we have many participants in a mesh, we need them all to comply to rules and standards that we set. Additionally, of course, data sharing is always risky, so we really do need some strong governance here. And last but not least, if practitioners actually want to implement a data mesh, they need a reference architecture. Of course, because of the time, I won't go through all of these challenges, but what I do want to look at is where they appeared. So all of them appeared in literature, but not all of them were mentioned in our interviews. And I want to talk about that, because that does not mean that they are not important in practice, these challenges that didn't appear, but that they were just not relevant for our interviews in particular. And I want to give 2 examples for that. So on the left, you can see the data domain definition. And this just means when you want to assign responsibilities to domains, you first need to have those domains. You need to divide your organization into units around data. And for the company that we interviewed, they have already done this. They have been working on organizing themselves into data domains for some time now, and they have achieved this. So this is not a challenge for them anymore. In the second example, in the middle, are data product maturity levels. So when you want to share your data, for example, within your own department, you need to be less careful about it than when you share your data, for example, with another company. In the latter case, you need to pay a lot more attention to security, for example, and so you will then invest a lot more time into this and end up with a data product that is a lot more mature than in the first case. So the company that we interviewed, our industry partner, they have just started using data products. So they are not yet at a point where the practitioners in the individual domains actually consider data products of different maturity levels. So this is not a challenge yet. However, it might become one in the future. So our next step was to derive research gaps from these challenges that we found. And because of the time, I will only go through 2 examples in detail. So the first example is the definition of a data product classification. So why do we need this? As we've already heard today, there are various use cases for data products, and each use case requires the data product to have different characteristics. We've even heard that it's not even really clear that there's no consensus over what a data product actually is. And this means that, let's say we have a data product that gives you the average energy consumption of your production plant. But you could also do a data product that includes a machine learning model of some kind. And these 2 data products will have a very different transformation complexity and very different implementations. So when you're a provider that wants to build a data product, you might be very confused then. Like, you have so many possibilities, you don't know which data product will actually fit your use case best. And a classification can help with that, because it can provide you with criteria that you as a provider can go through, and you can see, okay, what matches my use case? do I want ETL processing or will I use machine learning? And then you end up with a class that fits these criteria. And then you can even get implementation instructions for this specific type of data product class. And we already did some work in this direction. So we have a publication accepted at the DEXA conference in August of this year, where we present a data product classification that uses different criteria and divides data products into 6 classes. So for example, do I need ETL processing or do I want to use machine learning? Or also other aspects like, is my data product going to change in the future? If so, I will need to think about the update strategy that I'm going to be using. So we can see that this is very complex and there are many aspects to think about. And in the future, we would like to continue with this and investigate the impact of these classes on the implementation of the data products of these classes. Because we would really like to be able to give implementation instructions on these different classes to further support the providers. And of course, this has to be evaluated in practice because as it's all about supporting providers, they need to be able to use it. And so the second research gap is the definition of a life cycle. Why do we need this? So to enable people to effectively and efficiently develop and use data products is very complex because this requires a lot of people in different roles to work together, coordinate their processes with each other, but also around the data. And we can see this in this example. This is a process for publishing and provisioning data from IT et al., which was actually presented 3 years ago at this same conference. And here all the colorful dots represent different people in different roles. And we can for example, see that up on the right, we have the definition of a legal framework for this data set. And this already includes 3 different people in different roles to work together. And as we've seen with the intermesh before, if we imagine that this goes on over multiple companies, this will get even more complex. So the roles could really use some kind of overarching process as guidance for their processes. And this could be a data product lifecycle, which describes the phases that a data product goes through and the steps within each of those phases, so the different roles can orient themselves on this big overarching process and coordinate their processes with this. So to achieve this in the future, we need to check comparable approaches to other problems, like for example the data lifecycle, and see if we can adapt or extend them or even combine them with each other to create a data product lifecycle. And of course, this also has to be evaluated regarding its applicability in practice, because again, we want to support providers, so we need to check that they can actually use this. And with this, I'm already at the end of the presentation, and because of the time constraint, I could only go into detail on 2 of my research gaps, but I will be at the poster session, and I will be happy to discuss my topic later. Thank you.
This is this marks the end of today's session on data products, data mesh. I'd like to thank you for your patience. Sorry for my bad time management. For some of you, I know it has been a stretch. Tomorrow we'll go to space. We're not going to data space, but we're going to venture into astronomy in this first talk, bits, stars and knowledge really seems appealing. If you want to hear more about it, be back here tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock sharp.
Ich bin nur gerne verlangen. Das ist so ein virtueller. Ich glaube, alles gesagt. Das wollten wir, glaube ich, gar nicht probieren. Das macht das gut, wenn das das eigene Gerät ist. Das funktioniert dann super, aber so zum Ausleihen geht man das nicht. Bestimmt gibt es noch mehr.
Das heißt, wir treffen uns einfach sehr wenig. Wir laufen nicht gemeinsam hier.
Okay. Wir steigen mal.